108 tons of fuel and eventually crashing into the Atlantic Ocean just about 7 miles off the coast of Halifax. Since there were reports of some survivors, those reports have proven false. Rescue teams have been in the water for some 6.5 hours now, fishing vessels helping out. Some pieces and parts of planes have been found. At least 4 bodies have been recovered, removed from the water, at least one of them to a temporary morgue which has been set up nearby. In the meantime, more remains are being found, we're told, by various sources, including the Canadian Broadcasting Company and our own ATV, which has been covering for us throughout the night as they work to bring the news to those waking up. No daylight savings time in Canada, approaching 6 o'clock in Atlantic time zone in Nova Scotia, and certainly waiting to an air disaster of mammoth proportions. 229 people feared dead. Let's join ATV's coverage already in progress.
The 230 people on board Swissair Flight 111 may indeed have been American nationals, 53 passengers from Delta Airlines and at least 1 Delta flight attendant. We are still awaiting word from Geneva, which was, of course, the end destination of that ill-fated flight. Residents and relatives and loved ones there by now know the fate of that aircraft and are waiting for whatever word possible. Many of them will obviously be coming here to take their loved ones home with them.
In the news this morning, off the Canadian coast, with 229 people on board, crashes into the Atlantic. No sign of any survivors as a massive search and rescue effort goes through the night. At the New York departure point, those on the ground await word of loved ones.
From ABC, this is World News This Morning. Here's Melinda Wistock.
Good morning. It was a transatlantic flight that ended in tragedy. Swissair Flight 111 left New York's John F. Kennedy Airport for Geneva shortly after 8 o'clock last night. Not long afterwards, it crashed into the Atlantic off the coast of Nova Scotia with 215 passengers and 14 crew members on board. Rescue officials say that apparently no one survived the crash. Here's ABC's Jack Smith.
It went down in the sea in St. Margaret's Bay, near the village of Peggy's Cove in Nova Scotia in eastern Canada. Witnesses there said they heard a loud noise as the plane flew overhead and went down into the water.
You could tell it was too low, and eventually we heard a sort of a thud, and the house shook. There was a vibration, and I went outside on the doorstep, and everything was silent. You couldn't see flames or smoke or anything.
Rescuers and ambulances gathered on the seashore, and boats took to the water. They from the plane, floating in the ocean offshore.
We've located the aircraft at this point. It would appear that it's closer towards the city. We're looking at down towards the Peggy's Cove area.
I'm out at sea about 3 miles off an island called Ironbound Island. It appears that this is the point of... We've just now passed by deflated life rafts, life jackets. There's dozens of other boats with searchlights. Every few minutes, found human. They're calling for body bags. The Navy is sending barges to... I can see pieces of the fuselage. We've passed by other pieces of floating debris, possibly seat covers or seats. There have been no reports that I have heard on the VHF radio or that I can see here of any survivors at all.
ABC's Jack Smith reporting.
7 kilometers behind me is where the debris has been located. I am standing in the center of the command area. The RCMP is here. This is where the ground operations are being coordinated in terms of anything that is being found out on the site on the water. It is being brought back in here. It's a beehive of activity. Overhead, you can hear a helicopter. All throughout the night, we've been watching lights behind me from the search area. It doesn't appear to be anything happening there. That is one of the difficulties they've been having, the darkness, the bad weather, and high waves. At about 3:30 this morning, the first body to be taken ashore from the debris site came at the government wharf at Peggy's Cove. We have some videotape of that happening. What we're told is that this is the body of a woman. They can't confirm as to the condition of the body or whether there was a life jacket on the body. The procedure here is that the body is greeted by an RCMP chaplain and then a medical examiner. With my own eyes, a piece of debris being taken up from a fishing boat to the area where the RCMP are located. However, the RCMP spokesperson here couldn't confirm that any debris had actually been taken ashore.
There's dozens of fishing boats out there, several Canadian warships and Coast Guard cutters. As we moved through on the fishing boat I was on, we could see pieces of the airplane. At one point, we were right beside the deflated. There's a lot of life jackets and, unfortunately, bodies and pieces of bodies. Repeatedly, every 30 seconds, fishermen were calling to the Canadian Navy vessel saying, bags, I've just got some, I need more body bags. It's just a horrific, terrible scene.
No survivors have been spotted in the water.
No. People are looking for survivors. They've got very large fishing boats, 3 or 4 helicopters just going back and forth. It is still a desperate search for survivors, but there is absolutely no hint whatsoever that anybody has survived.
We return now to our coverage of the crash of the Swissair Flight 111, a McDonnell Douglas plane bound for New York. It took off, as you know, about 8 o'clock in the evening last night here in New York. It's 8 o'clock in the evening Eastern time. It crashed just off the coast of Nova Scotia in Canada in the Atlantic. Conflicting reports whether it was a mile off the coast or 7 miles off the coast. There were 229 people on board, and it looks right now from reports that we're getting in from the emergency services that it is very unlikely that there have been any survivors. Right now, we can speak to Robert Gordon. He is a CBC reporter. That's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reporter. He is on a boat in the middle of a debris field. First of all, what can you tell us? What are you seeing?
Well, I can tell you that it's like a floating village out here. There's dozens of fishing boats, Canadian Navy warships, helicopters scanning the waters with searchlights looking for any sign of survivors, but it appears that they haven't found. I can see wreckage, life rafts, pieces of the aircraft. What I'm hearing on the VHF radio, what I'm seeing is a call for body bags, boat after boat reporting that they found yet another body.
And so, at this stage, Robert, it looks very unlikely that there will be any survivors?
I would say that. It's desperate. People are continuing to look for survivors, but repeated calls are being made by the dozens of boats out here for body bags, yet more body bags, and report after report that they've discovered human remains.
Very famous Peggy's Cove lighthouse. Labrador, the twin-engine helicopter, hovering very close to the surface of the water. And as Jonathan Kay mentioned earlier, they've moved the search up very much closer to shore, specifically because the tide has come up and the swells have risen, and there's great concern that a lot of the wreckage that has hit the water, that apparently the plane hit at great impact because the wreckage is so small, that much of that wreckage is now coming up onshore, and the RCMP very earlier on had asked us to anybody who tomorrow in the light of day finds a piece of wreckage, call the RCMP immediately. They will be identifying each small piece as part of the investigation. It is vital. It is not the time for ghoulish souvenir hunting.
And this is a live shot as the search effort continues this morning at Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia.